Okay, everyone. So now we are on to Standard 1.2, the last of the parts of Standard 1.2, and this is going to talk primarily about internal migrations from the period of 1880 to 1920. So we've already been talking about like the standard and with the idea of talking about the movement of people into the United States. So immigration, they're coming for jobs, they're coming to work in industries. A lot of them filling up minings, agriculture is pushing many westward at the same time. So today we're going to talk about the idea of within. Why, not just the immigrant groups are coming, but also, people who are already here and where are they moving to within the United States during this time period. So we'll look at some migration trends. The central questions for this is what was the major migration trends occurred, which major migration trends occurred within the United States from 1880 to 1920, and what was the cause of urbanization in the United States from 1880 to 1920, okay? So the migrations that are occurring in the United States these are like already in play. They've already been going on since the beginning of our country's history, and some of the things that highlighted in the previous stuff that we've been learning about in Unit 0. 1862, we have the Homestead Act, and that's pushing a lot of people westward. And because of the availability of land, a lot of more people are settling into the West and so forth. We also see boomtowns start to spur up in the 1850s, 60s, and 70s. In these mining towns, as they kind of come about, they are going to, because of the discovery of precious metals such as gold and silver and others like copper. Utah and Kennecott Mine is a good example of the precious metals that were found here in the West, and you see some boom towns that are still around today, and some that have since gone away. The dodo, and that's just how it was. So new immigrant groups also are coming in waves. And not only are they settling into the United States in the cities, but they're also moving to different regions of the United States as well. And similar to how they cluster in the cities and in certain areas, you'll see that there's a clustering of like certain groups that in certain parts of the country, as they settle across the vast land that is the United States. So while most of the immigrants are coming in through cities such as New York City, like Ellis Island, most of them are migrating elsewhere. Like the cities only have so much jobs and so much space for the large number of immigrants that are coming into the United States at that time. And so, once they're able to, they can hop onto a railroad and head to other cities, the Northeast and the Midwest and beyond. And the big thing that we notice is they tend to cluster in patterns of, in regions of the United States. The reasons for this is work availability. The demand for certain jobs sometimes meets the skill of the individuals, the individual groups that are coming into here. A good example of that would be Norwegians who are going to concentrate in parts of Midwest and around the Great Lakes. They wanted those areas because there was a lot of demand for timber industry workers and lumberjacks, something that was done, in their ancestral homeland. And so, the familiarity with that, as well as particularly dairy farming, that was the things that they brought to that region of the country. So, as a result, they bring themselves, they bring their families with them, and they concentrated in those regions. Environmental preference could also be a thing because, the United States has many climates and many different environments within its borders. And so some will move into areas that are kind of more familiar and feel like home in some cases. It's not always the case, but, that is another reason for why they concentrate in certain areas, kind of staying on with the Norwegian people that came here. A lot of them do go to Minnesota because of the climate there is very similar to what they found in their ancestral homeland of Norway. It's, plenty of lakes, water, and then, of course, they have, very cold winters and so forth. And so it kind of reminds them more so of home, and they can adapt to the environment easier and be able to adapt to America and living in America easier as well. So in this little map here on the PowerPoint, you can see kind of the concentration where we see the greatest concentration of, people of certain ancestry in the United States by 1920, the end of this period. And so you have a lot of German and um, you know Austrian migrants that make up much of the Midwest. And you go out to the Midwest, there's a pretty it still shows today. A lot of farming that was done in Germany is kind of done in this Midwest as well. Up here in Michigan, where a lot of them are going to move into for factory work and so forth. So a lot of German ancestry. Mentioned Minnesota up here, where they have a lot of concentration of people of Scandinavian, Norwegian, and Swedish in particular. You'll see a lot in Denmark as well, or sorry, a lot in Utah of people of Danish descent. And for those who did the research on their, Immigration Lab Part 2, a lot of Danish immigrants came here because the Mormon church had sent missionaries to Denmark, and so many converted and wanted to come to the land where, you find the LDS Church and its headquarters and so forth, and that is in Utah, in Salt Lake. And so you can see, once they get here, then they move out to different parts of Utah. So that's why you have a big concentration of Danish people in Utah, of all places. So another major and probably the more important of the migration trends that are occurring during this time period is urbanization. And you see large numbers of people from the population starting to migrate into the cities. In 1860, right before the outbreak of the Civil War, the census showed us that only 1/6 of the U.S. population was living in cities. And there weren't many cities to begin with. I mean, there's Philadelphia, New York City, Boston, Baltimore. You don't have a large number of them. But by 1920, you have more cities. And because of that, there's more people moving to the cities. Roughly 11 million people migrate from the rural areas to the urban areas within that time period. So by 1920, it is the first time where you'll see the majority of Americans living in city limits rather than living in the rural parts of our country. So it's a complete flip in a very short period of time. And why that happens? Well, the first major reason, the one that I think is worth noting the most, is that where the factories were, as our country industrializes, more factories have been built. They're being built near certain areas that are leading to the concentration of people, and the size of the cities continue to grow. Cities themselves, factories themselves are going to be built near railroads, near waterways, where there already are a bunch of people anyway. And so, as there is going to be more industrialization, more factories built, the demand for more people to come there and work and such from both immigrants and from rural areas of our country, over time we see more and more cities pop up. And this is especially true in the Northeast and the Midwest, where the concentration of factories was larger. So cities like Chicago, Cincinnati, Cleveland, Detroit, all of those are going to expand in size because that's where the factories are being built. So skyscrapers is another reason why cities urbanization continues to become a big trend, where these cities only have so much space to be able to put people and factories both. Then the idea of skyscrapers, instead of expanding horizontally across the landscape, you expand vertically into the sky. And in doing so, they can create more space for people to live, more office space, more factory space. And that is a big, important invention, is the skyscraper. Not capable of happening unless, we have large quantities of steel that was made at a fairly reasonable price. And that's where the Bessemer process and Andrew Carnegie play such a significant role in helping build this country to what it becomes. Steel is also going to be used to build bridges, and bridges that are going to link the different parts of the city, because prior to this, you have a lot of the cities, especially early on when the industrialization comes, near riverways, because they would use the water to power the mills until it's replaced by steam engines. Even then, they would want to be near waterways where they can use the waterways to transport their goods out into different markets. So the building of these bridges, such as the Brooklyn Bridge, which is America's first like suspension bridge, it kind of connects like parts of the city to each other. And so like New York City today is made up of 5 boroughs, and Brooklyn is one of them that connects it to Manhattan. And so now you have people easier able to kind of move across the different or the expanse of the city, which makes it available to more land for people to settle. Suburbs, which were suburbs at one time, are now kind of part of the city itself. But that is an important reason why cities begin to expand as well. The availability of mass transit systems like the electric streetcar, which is something that you don't see very much anymore, like the track system within Salt Lake is kind of a more advanced streetcar because it uses the same concept of electricity on wires over the track, and then it's able to go much faster than the streetcars of then. There's only really one city that still kind of has the electric streetcar as it's kind of made famous, and that's San Francisco. More cities opted for different mass transit systems like the subway, which you'll find in New York City, where it's the Underground Electric Railroad. And then you also have elevated trains where they build platforms to elevate the trains above the street level so you can still use the street for cars and people moving around, and even cities. A good example of a city in the United States that has the elevated train is Chicago, which they refer to that train system as the L. Not the letter L, but EL, elevated. There's a lot more economics and social opportunities in these cities as well. Department stores, which had more variety of goods and products that were available in the cities that weren't found in your rural areas where there's just mom and pop general shops that only carry so many products, usually the essential items. Of course, you can get things through the Sears catalog, but that could take time. The department stores, it's very convenient, and so a lot of people really enjoy that aspect of city living. Same thing with indoor plumbing, electricity, the entertainment. There's concert halls. There is theaters. There's things for people to go to do on their downtime after they get off their work, and it's more so, of course, for people of certain wealth classes. But that is an attractive feature of the city. Is why you would want to live in the city. Is more culture and entertainment there. There's also something to be said about how much more opportunities are going to be available for women in the cities than there are in the rural parts. In the rural parts, and I'm overgeneralizing here, women who are generally expected to get married, have kids, work on the farms, things like that. But it's not something that everybody had aspired to. And as more jobs became available in the city, more women moved there to work in factories in some cases, but also to work other jobs that require a certain amount of skills. Social workers, secretaries, store clerks, seamstresses, telephone operators, bookkeepers, all jobs that are typically filled by women. And you'll notice that those jobs are not necessarily kind of your manager or anything like that. It's not something that's going to be widely available or expected of women during this time. For a little while and such. But these jobs are kind of a tipping off point or stepping off point for many of the women to kind of become independent and earn their own wages and be in charge of their own property value. And, over time, sometimes they get married and, add to the family income and household and improve their standard of living. So that's something that is very attractive why people are moving to the city, more opportunities for women as well. So this is a very short, to the point lecture. Your essential questions is what was the major migration trends during the United States in 1880 and 1920? And then, of course, what were the causes of urbanization? So make sure you respond and use specific examples from the lecture to show that you understand and that you watched it, obviously, so that I can score it, 1 through 4, 4 being somebody who's using real specific examples and explain how those examples answer the question. So make sure you aim for that standard yourself. With that being said, that is it for now. You will have a quiz on 1.2 now that we've had the 3 lectures for that. You'll have a quiz on 1.2 and 1.4 next time in class. So make sure you take the time to review those PowerPoints and get ready for that. Until then, I will see you later.